chance.
Just dropped my kid off at work. He was having a panic attack about which mask he should wear.
As John
The
likes to say,
Yankee one or the
3,
Bumblebee
2,
one.
1.
Right. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Awesome. Okay.
It still thinks it's thinking. Let's see.
Okay. I'm looking at like Spider-Man face masks and things like that. So for myself, of course.
Oh, yeah. Sports
very good.
teams. There's all kinds of ways you can go.
That's
It's like
right.
picking out your glasses frames now.
My husband, who of course is a frontline physician, found himself without a mask and was forced to greet a service person wearing one of my hot pink
Nice.
Lily Pulitzer things, which was really quite amusing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got a box of disposable ones and sort of stuffed them in strategic locations around cars and
Yeah,
the house and
in all the
everything.
cars.
Yeah. Okay. Let's,
Take it away, John.
Thank you very much. Call to order this special meeting of the Joint Policy Committees for Eastern Reading Region 9. First order, approval of minutes from the July 24th, 2020 Policy Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We'll close that out. I'm going to, can you give me the rights to share my screen?
I'll make you a co-host.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Public comment? No member of the public being present. Move on. Committee member comment?
2-week streak of having public participation is over.
Do I note that for the minutes or no?
No committee member comment. Moving on to discussion and possible action. First up, policies related to reopening. So we have been talking about two policies in the past: face mask coverings policy and the emergency disaster preparedness policies. So I know that we had moved these on for a first reading. Are we looking to go back and examine them further?
I think I asked that it be on the agenda to make sure that we are all 100% square, that face mask coverings is ready for a second reading and approval on Tuesday with the tri-boards.
Right.
And the distance learning plan is ready for a first reading with the tri-boards on Tuesday, which would theoretically set it up for an approval by the districts at their next cycle.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to open both of these documents.
And we'll want to be prepared to identify the changes on face masks back to the
Right.
tri-boards on Tuesday.
Right.
Yes,
Which I
I did
think-
meet with our medical advisors yesterday, and so I want to provide an update on that as well.
Okay. Do we want to lead with that? We have highlighted okay, so we'll,
This is the policy we passed on entirely.
that's
yeah.
correct. That's right. So we're gonna get rid of that one. Okay, good. So face masks. This is almost identical to everything that we touched on before, with the exception of this piece here, where we're saying we want to switch to a request for medical exemption form. will be
Possible to
made-
make it any larger, John?
Oh, you know what? I always do that. Thank you. There we go.
Thanks.
Sure.
So our medical advisors are recommending, they are going to craft a cover letter that will go with the form that parents need to fill out. It is their opinion, as I shared last week, that there's essentially almost no medical condition that would allow one to have an exemption, because if the condition, the respiratory condition in particular, were so severe that it wouldn't be possible to wear a mask, frankly, a doctor probably would not recommend that that individual be at school. Now, the category of students that would likely require a mask exemption would be those students in special education who might have sensory issues or other disabilities that would make the mask wearing just not possible. So what we've talked about is a form that would include the state categories and then with the other. But the medical advisor feels strongly that they want parents to allow the school to make contact with the doctor. And of course, parents have to get permission for that. Because if they're certifying that there's an other condition, which very well might be, and that's reasonable, then they would want to speak to the doctor to determine what other, sort of safety provisions might be put in place that are appropriate for that individual student. So the policy thing is here, how do we give the district some authority, knowing that of course parents have to sign off on it?
It sounds to me like we're asking for what's similar to sort of the interactive process when you talk about accommodating a disability. And saying, I am taking the position, no mask. Okay, let's have a conversation about if not mask, what? And having that with the medical advisors, basically.
Yes.
Would it make sense for us to add a bit here, suggesting not only that we need a medical exemptions fall into categories specified by state and local health officials, and a conversation, that's what we're asking for, right? Is that the parent?
Yes, and possible. So it's the doctor that's certifying that this is a bona fide condition, but the ability for the district to confirm that through a verbal discussion with the physician.
Right. Certifies the existence of a qualifying medical condition for which the student is under the medical professional's care, and that the parent authorize verbal confirmation with that medical, between the district and medical professional.
Right. So
Do
the
you want to
question,
go beyond that? Do you
Yeah,
want
the
to go beyond
question-
confirmation to discussion of the condition?
yeah. So if the parent denies that, then the district would have the right to say, then you are by default saying that you are going to learn from home.
I think we put that right in there.
Right. Authorizes what? And that the parent or guardian authorizes the
District?
District.
to verbally confirm, or just to confirm.
To confer with the authorizing
Yeah.
medical professional.
Yes,
It has
because
to
you
be
want to do
some-
more than say, is this the diagnosis?
Right. You
Right.
want to have a dialogue.
Right. They don't want to just look at the document. I mean, the document might be adequate depending on what is provided.
Was there a discussion of whether or not there was a HIPAA release that you would need signed to talk to the doctor?
Well, I mean, clearly the parent has to get permission. They didn't talk about exactly what that release was.
I'm also concerned a little bit when we talk about our medical advisors, whether they are covered by the definition of the district. Because we're talking about a third party we work with, talking to a third party the parent works with. It's different than saying our nurse is calling them, because they're
Right.
not necessarily an employee of the district.
District and its representatives or
The district,
agents.
including its medical advisors.
Yes, I mean, that is in a sort of a role within, so it's not just anyone. So I think medical advisors make sense.
Okay, that the parent or guardian authorizes the district.
Districts, I would say the district's nurse coordinator and medical advisors, something like that, provide a,
Yeah, I wouldn't say coordinator though, because it might be just the school nurse.
Health advisors, the district's health advisors.
Yeah,
I think we have to decide who all is having these conversations so we make sure that they're covered adequately and not.
Can you say nursing staff? Because it could be the coordinator, it could be the school nurse. I mean, my
And-
hunch is that each school nurse is going to confer with the nursing coordinator in these situations.
Would this make sense? District's nursing staff and or health advisors?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
I do think with respect to your comment about the cover letter for the form, I think there's some value to having at least the key takeaways from that cover letter also be on the face of the form.
Mhm.
Because even if the parent gets here's the big black letter warning, they're not going to give that to their doctor, particularly if they're trying to get their doctor to sign off on anything. I think the doctor needs to have in front of them, here's the district's position, and they need to work within that framework.
Right.
Yes, Corey Disler is going to be working with Larry Leibowitz and Ellen Cohen on those two documents.
I mean, I'm almost inclined to include a checkbox that the health professional checks saying, I have read the district's position, I'm aware of the policy, so that they're not operating in a vacuum.
Well, before we get here, don't we need another sentence at the end of this about, failure to do this is your acknowledgement that you will be temporarily learning from home or something like that?
Right. You default into TLH or whatever we're calling it.
Failure to comply with this policy. I feel like we have that.
Well, I don't think it's failure to comply with this policy. I think that really this is how you get an exemption.
Mhm.
If you don't have an exemption, you're either wearing a mask or you're temporarily learning from home.
Right.
So I'm not sure we need to kind of say, if you don't fill out the form right, you learn from home. I think that's kind of the framework of the policy.
Right.
These are the hoops you need to jump through to get an exemption.
Right. Okay.
And I think that could be clear on the form itself too. And the cover letter or whatever.
Is it okay? Is it okay if I put, just to be crystal clear, district's nursing staff and or district's health advisors?
Right. So it's not the nursing staff's health advisors.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I let's just quickly check, but I don't believe there's anything else that we changed. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else, Stephanie, that you would recommend we look at based on your most recent conversations?
No, I mean, the medical advisors just continue to say that the mask wearing is the most important thing.
Mhm.
So.
Is there, what is our timeline on when we think we'll have a standalone document on guidance for what masks qualify or don't qualify, so that we can sort of give some direction to families about on or before such and such a date, you will see exactly what the deal is. So that also, because there's going to be some pushback to say, now we're into August, I need to go talk to my doctor to get this exemption. I need some kind of runway to do it as far as time is concerned.
Well, oh, you mean in terms of like the material of the mask? I mean, the plan does include pictures of the mask and what's not allowed.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of the 80% of folks who aren't going to drill down into the plan to that level of depth and are just going to look for a one-page flyer that says, okay, no vents, no mesh, no holes.
That's
you know,
right.
what's the...
Yeah, I'll ask Corey to put that together and we could have that by next week.
That would be helpful, I think, to get the community a little bit more comfortable.
Okay.
And once we get this policy adopted, we can move forward with the exemption forms and start circulating those too.
Right. At the Easton meeting, I think that someone misstated that we would expect parents to provide masks, and that's not the case. The district will provide masks to students and staff, but families are certainly welcome to provide their own as well.
Right. And we actually expect that most families are going to provide their own.
We do.
Right.
We do.
We don't expect them to do it. We expect that will happen.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's not like we're imposing the expectation, we're expecting the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like school supplies. We will provide school supplies to everyone. And we also know that many parents participate in the school supply fundraisers.
Right.
So are we going to have masks on all the buses? Like all the buses are going to have a box of masks?
Yeah, there's some discussion of exactly what that setup looks like. There are all sorts of restrictions in terms of what can be attached to the bus walls and the role of the driver.
Right.
So I believe our current status is the expectation is that the student has to have the mask on before they get on the bus,
Right.
or they don't get on the bus. So initially, we were planning to have some kind of a supply of masks, but Scott and I are still working with the bus company about, what that might look like.
Is there a middle ground that involves running kind of a monitor the first day of buses to give out masks to kids who try to get on the bus and don't have a mask? Because I predict running into a situation where on day one, Johnny 7th grader tries to get on the bus, doesn't have a mask, also doesn't have a parent home to drive them anymore, and is stuck at home.
Right.
And at that point, it's not because if the school is going to provide a mask, they haven't had the opportunity to do that yet.
On paper, it's possible. It's just a matter of finding those individuals.
Oh, I agree. I'm not disputing that. I'm just trying to work through a conceptual problem.
Sure, we could. And if we open in hybrid, we would probably want to do that for the first 4, the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday of the first week, so that both cohorts have that support.
Okay. We're good with I think we're good with this policy, and I found the strike through so that we are clear that we're replacing this with this.
Okay, so because
We can
made-
incorporate the form by reference or somehow refer to this form. Because reading this language, if some parent were to just read this language alone,
Right.
I think it could create right now a bevy of phone calls to the schools.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point.
That's why I was kind of asking what the timeline was for forms and guidance, so that once this becomes a public thing, people don't go,
Where's the form?
where's everything? Yeah.
Right. Yes. So one of our medical advisors is on vacation next week, but we set a 10-day timeline to have that completed as of yesterday. The form and the cover letter. But the 1-pager could be ready for next week.
Yeah.
Or it can certainly
I
do
wouldn't
the
put a start date in a standing policy.
Neither would I, but I would just have some reference to it at this point, because you're going to have parents looking for guidance every which way they can. And I don't know, I just think it'll avoid some phone calls.
I
I
mean,
mean, I think we
August 15th is certainly reasonable.
want to say that it's going to be available on the district website or some,
That's fine.
your place. And you could say to be available on the district website at least 2 weeks before masks are required or something.
That's exactly what, yeah.
Because if this is an evergreen policy, the superintendent wants to turn on masks, the superintendent needs to give a 2-week runway
Right. For people to get a medical exception.
for an exemption.
Right. Now, is it possible that we would need to stop, but then would intend to start in a week's time?
That's why I'm concerned about it. Like
Right.
if we turn it, if it's a precondition to turning the policy on, I don't necessarily want a 2-week runway, because
Right.
that defeats some of the purpose.
Right.
I mean, you can just say 2 weeks prior to the start of the academic year, and that becomes
And then I think it becomes, it's a little bit tricky, because I think if we have a form and that form can be evergreen for future pandemics, I mean,
Oh, golly.
We don't know.
yeah,
in 2118, they'll be ready.
they'll thank us then.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think we might be overthinking this, and this might just be a communications problem. And this might just be when we address it at the meeting, this is what we say. When we publish it, we include language saying the form will be available on or before August 15th.
Yes.
Yeah.
The policy has to get done, the form has to get done. We're not going to solve this problem.
Yep.
Can I
Good.
suggest that when you talk about face shields, I think we have to make it clear that they are not, I mean, can we underline that somehow? face shields are
Yep.
not as effective for source control. Because people continue to think it's an either or, even though I know that
Right.
we've stated otherwise many places.
I mean, you could just bold that sentence.
Bold and italics. Not.
I mean, I would take the whole sentence possibly and put it in bold.
Okay.
It's in the middle of a paragraph where people start
Yeah.
glossing.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
You want to talk about consequences as in a more direct way here by saying, failure to adhere to the district's mask policy will result in a student temporarily learning from home, or something a little bit more direct than appropriate consequences?
Yeah.
Including but not limited to exclusion from in-person learning.
That's fine.
Including but not limited.
Not limited to exclusion from in-person learning.
We don't want to get more letters and comments and procedural stuff as a result of this. And the letter that Chris was circulating was ground zero for that,
Okay.
Do you want to highlight that in green just to note that we've made a change?
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay.
And I would move that we advance that the policy committee recommend to the tri-board the adoption of the mask policy 4118.237 as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Good. Very good. That one's done. Sorry.
So I am hoping that we will see, I asked Patty and Jen to provide input. They didn't provide it to me via email. So I'm hoping that they made comments directly into the document.
Okay. And I just saw Jen was just in here, so, or
Okay.
was in here very recently. So I think that's going to be the case. Okay, we did. Okay. So we did look at this already. We move this. I think we said we wanted to take this to a first reading.
I think we did, yeah.
Okay. And so that's going to happen on the 4th?
It's on the agenda for the 4th at the moment, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Do we want to, is there any special ed comment in here we want to address, or are we good for right now?
Let's look through.
Let's see.
I don't see any comments from Jen.
Okay, I think then we still move forward with advancing it for that first reading based on the prior motion, get it done, and to the extent we have further comments from special ed we can address.
Can you just go up for a minute, John, so I can read? Because I know what we've discussed.
Could you make this slightly bigger too, John?
I wish it
Sorry.
would just stay. No. I changed it to 125, but it's only
Great.
per document. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's going on the 2020 t-shirt after connecting to audio. Can you make this a little bigger?
Wording
sorry,
is
you're on
fine.
mute.
Do we need to delete the language that says here, wording is fine? Subpart A.
Oh, you know what? That it's possible that's what Jen just did.
Maybe, but we don't want that in the policy.
No, agreed.
Because you can look at the audit trail, right? You
That's
can see who
exactly
did
what I
that.
was about to do. Yep.
There we go. Did the three dots show you where she changed? Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay, and that's the most recent version of change. Let me just check this one too. Yep, so this is that. So she did enter, her wording is fine.
Yep.
And then she made some edits, but then made additional edits here.
So I think we should strike wording is fine again, and then we probably need to move to adopt the revised version
Correct.
for a first reading.
Okay, good. I love the version history. It's so great.
I use it all the time.
It's so great. Okay. All right. So we'll strike this guy.
It saves a lot of aggravation.
Yes, it does.
All right, so I'd move that we recommend the distance learning policy
Mhm.
number 6172.61 to the tri-boards as amended for a first reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Unanimous. Okay.
Do we actually get back to the work we started 6 months ago now?
I mean, I think we're back to
Well-
3000.
No, you need
Maybe
the
not.
Title IX.
We have it, yeah, Title IX has some urgency because it
Very
needs
good.
to be in place August 15th.
Okay. Do we have that policy?
You, Sharon should have sent it yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in our email.
And the new regulations are, 2,000 pages.
Oh
good.
dear.
Fantastic.
Light reading.
Fantastic. Yes. So they came out in the height of our distance learning, and many of us participated in a webinar, and there's a lot that we need to do in terms of compliance with the new policy, assigning roles, changing some of our procedures. When they checked the handbooks really just refer to following the current district policy. They don't outline specifically what we do in terms of Title IX. So the handbooks are okay, but we certainly need to update our policy.
Okay. I have grievance procedure complaint form. There we go.
And the CABE policy notes that it was approved in June by CPS, which I'm guessing is another district.
Sounds right. CABE policy services, though, right?
Yeah, but at the bottom it says CPS approved 620,
Huh.
which is probably, Cheshire Public Schools or something and not somebody's initials.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So how does this compare to what is currently in place, to the extent anything is in place?
I don't know what our current policy says, to be totally honest with you.
And is this a situation also where we can pass on adopting a reg and only adopt a policy?
I don't know the answer to that.
Generally, that's been our practice, and I wonder, I think we do that because we believe that the policies belong in the policy book, and the regs are about how we're going to actually execute the policy, right?
Right. The CABE preface says that a complaint procedure is legally required, but I don't think you need to publish it in a policy book for it to exist.
Mhm. I've referenced this policy when I've been involved in Title IX investigations, and it includes the process that parents would go through if they don't agree with the findings and the contact people. And one of the updates to the Title IX regulation include the assignment of many more roles in the process. So we have to be sure that the that the parents have the right contact information. So this is the recommended policy from CABE that we're looking at right now.
And is the policy 4001 or 5145? Or is it both? So I'm willing to accept that they've just numbered it twice, but
That's pretty common actually.
all right, it's not showing up as 4,000 in our current book. Let me check the 5,000s. All right. Oh, geez. Right now, Reading has 5145, 5145.12, 5145.42, 0.51, 0.511, 0.5111,
Oh dear.
0.53, 0.53, 0.6, 0.6. So this is 0.44. Yeah, this is. All right, I think I found. And I'm going to. John, I'm turning off your screen share for a second.
Yep.
Here's what I see for Reading at the moment under 5145.6, which I'm going to just assume is at least substantially similar in all three districts.
Yes.
And this was approved in 2017 in Reading anyway.
.6.
I mean, the quick fix would be there is more than one responsible employee.
Mhm.
So we could make that plural.
This is the Reading policy, though. I
This is
think
the
we have to-
existing Reading policy.
Right.
So assuming that they're the same, I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but they certainly should be. I
Stranger things, but it's.
think of the minimum that we could do just to have something that's compliant with the updated law.
Right. If the change in law is to have multiple designated individuals, then we can tweak these. We can tweak this and recommend all three boards accept it as tweaked for the purpose of creating immediate compliance.
But is that the
Or we
only
could-
thing?
It's
That's
not
going to be my next question. Or are we going to? Do we need to drill down on the model policy and see what's actually required at this point?
I think it's going to be easier to start with the model that at least is made some attempt to be in compliance with some rules that we don't know about or haven't read anyway. Not we
right. So
don't
you
know.
can see in the policy highlights, you can see the key differences.
Okay, well, that would be helpful.
That sexual harassment is defined for the first time, that what constitutes a hostile environment is newly defined with an enforcement standard. The manner in which we respond and the timeline has been revised.
I'm wondering which of this sits in the policy umbrella versus the regulatory and procedural umbrella.
Can we go back to the CABE screen though, folks?
I'm going to switch, let John take over again.
Yep.
I mean, it was pretty clear that we could separate out some of these. I mean, as in point of reality, none of us spent the time, having gotten this yesterday, or certainly I didn't, to even read
Right.
this in anything but the most cursory way.
Right.
But clearly it's the same thing as before in every other policy we've done. We can move certain parts of it to regs. We can have a general statement. We could say, like, there are multiple persons which need to be contacted, please see regs.
I mean, what I don't like about the preamble here is that it says the board agrees to comply with Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 and the regulations as amended in the final rule promulgated pursuant thereto. It should just say as the regulations as may be amended from time to time.
Right. Because it implies that there's something that's still outstanding that could come down after the fact, which would be.
Right, because otherwise we're changing the policy every time somebody writes a new rule, and that's ridiculous.
And this policy exists in a number of places, correct? It exists it's for students and for staff.
In Reading, it only existed in the 5000 series. CABE cross numbers them, but it doesn't look like Reading adopted it in a cross numbered way.
Hmm.
We don't need to say in this policy, Title IX applies to persons in this district because its agency programs and activities receive federal assistance. I mean, that may be true, but it's not our statement of policy. That can come out.
Sorry.
Middle sentence of paragraph 2.
And Chris's comment as to the second sentence of paragraph 1, the board agrees to comply with Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 and the regulations as amended thereto or promulgated
As may
thereto.
from time to time be amended or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Or just as amended, period.
Yeah, as amended, period.
Yeah. That's keep it simple, stupid. That's
And we don't have to say with which charges a school with actual knowledge, because that's an evidentiary standard. We don't need to say that. The district's response shall be triggered by notice to a Title IX coordinator or to an official with authority to institute corrective measures on the recipient's behalf, period.
yeah.
Do we put the definitions in the regulations or do we leave them here?
I think we have some definitions in our mask policy. I think it can be helpful.
Okay.
It's helpful only to the extent that we ultimately use the terms within the policy and not just the
Right.
regulation.
Right.
All right, well then, sex discrimination and sexual harassment definitions are no doubt taken, I would hope, verbatim, so we're leaving them.
Mhm.
There does seem to be a typo at 34 USC, so there should be 34 space USC and one above too.
Yeah, I assume they're taken right from the statute. Just playing it forward, thinking about whether or not the definition becomes too restrictive to the extent that the terms evolve judicially. But
That's true.
because I could see very easily, precedent being expanded to apply sexual orientation under Title IX, and I don't want the definition here to be overly restrictive in that respect. But I'm probably overthinking it for the purposes of this one.
Okay. So we've got 15 minutes. There's 20 pages. Right.
Saying there's a chance.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, we're certainly going to need more time to work on this. And of course, we're going to be compliant with the law as it's in place on August 15th. And I think it just needs to be in process.
Yeah, as a procedural matter, do we want to recommend this policy to the tri-boards for a Tuesday first reading so that we're through that procedural hoop while we are still working on it, and invite feedback to the committee the same way we did with the masks? Because otherwise we're pushing this out probably into October before it gets approved.
Yeah, I think that's
That
wise.
makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there
Now, are
any
we
other
moving
parts
just-
of the, go ahead.
Are we moving just the policy and striking the regulation at this point?
Yeah, we don't need to do anything with regulation.
The regulation and the sample form and everything else.
Right. Okay. So, and are we talking about putting this in 4,000 and 5,000 series?
Why both?
I think the
They
5,000.
apply to
What is
They apply to
students and what is
students and staff.
faculty?
Right.
Okay,
It really does need to be in both.
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
understood.
I didn't understand that until Chris said something earlier that triggered, that's why we have both numbers. Okay.
All right, so I would move that the policy committee recommend policy 4000.1 cross-numbered 5145.44 to be advanced to the three boards for a first reading.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Good. Okay. So we'll mark this up as well along the way, but this is what we'll send to first reading, but then we can insert our comments so that we're prepared next Friday to dive into this. I think it's reasonable. We can get through 20 pages. We've done that before. So by next Friday, we should have our comments.
The only adjustment to the agenda for the board meeting is that I think that it states the policies are specific to.
We'll have to add it to we'll have to revise the tri-board policy, and we'll do that this morning. The tri-board agenda.
Okay. All right. Very good. In our remaining time, do we want to jump into 3000s?
I think we go back to the handbook, and I do kind of want to make a general comment about the handbook and from a path forward perspective. Do we want to take a pause on the 3000s and address our on again, off again conversation about the way in which tri-district governance works in light of an incoming superintendent, to have a conversation about sort of expectations and process that is helpful for setting a tone come, entry on duty, so that we don't, I feel like in the past few weeks, we've had a number of inter-district disputes about who's doing what, how they're doing it, what committees should be charged with what. And to the extent we can make a recommendation that resolves any of those things, I think that's probably helpful. But I don't know if that's going down too deep a rabbit hole right now and getting us away from the core mission.
So I would say that we have allowed a few policies that are newcomers to jump to the front of the line because they're super relevant right now. They're timely, right? So the face mask policy and normally our policy would be, we put it into the quarterly review thing and we'll talk about it when we come to our quarterly review.
Right.
I think to suggest that we would jump to the front of the line issues that help us to ensure a healthy dynamic between ourselves and a new superintendent, I think that makes a lot of sense. We've talked about putting that into a kind of a section at the beginning of, and I could probably find it pretty quickly, a section at the beginning
preface kind of thing.
Yeah, that is like, hey, by the way, here's some special stuff that sort of policies
I mean, an alternate way to do it, instead of us sitting around and kind of dictating what that should look like, is to wait until the new superintendent arrives and have a collaborative discussion as between the leadership of the 3 boards and the superintendent about what is going to be the most efficient way to move governance forward collectively, and get that individual's insights also.
Yeah, I think a really solid argument could be made for that. That it would be nice for us to have that conversation as an inclusive argument, and it allows us to continue to make progress and to, I mean, can we get through the 3,000 and the 4,000 series? It depends on what the timeline looks like for the individual who comes in.
Mhm.
Will we get through the 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000? I don't think so. Yeah.
Not unless this becomes our full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
More so than it feels like it already has.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bigger question. It's not just policy. Policy would be our full-time job.
Right. That's right.
Policy is still just a fun hobby.
Policy is just 25% of my overall time.
It even comes to 25?
Only for
Okay.
Fridays. That's
Right, for Fridays, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we need to decide what we're going to do with the remainder of our time and how we're going to use it most productively.
I think let's look at 3,000s, figure out where we are, because we're
Yep.
going to be in a point where we can start actually getting
Yep.
back to that work relatively soon,
Yeah.
and at least give ourselves some homework before we adjourn.
Agreed. And so on that topic, so continuing, I think this moves us to agenda item B, resume the review of CABE policy manual. So we have, we left off here on July 10th to resume. We thought we were hoping last week, and we ended up pushing it to this week just because we had the other things to do. But one of the things that we've identified as a standard practice is that we're going to move things to the, what are we calling it? OIB document. So I just wanted to quickly show that document. Sorry, here we go. So open issues. Right, the open issues document. So, and the way that I'm doing that, so we all have access to this. It's inside the big folder that I created for policy committee. And essentially what I'll do is I'll take a screenshot, because there's not really any other elegant way of capturing the policy plus the comments in a way where we can see the highlights. I know that the zoom on this is not great, but if we go in, it's pretty easy to read. But also I wanted to note these links. These will take you not only to that policy document, but specifically will scroll you to the comments that are sent there. And I'm doing that just by, I clicked the little 3 dots and it says link to this comment. So it's fairly simple to set up the document like that. Right now, the only I think we called it OIB, open issues. I don't know, maybe it's OID, open issues document, let's say. The only 2 that we had in the 3000 series are both associated with 3231. So I just wanted to give everybody that orientation and to know that the point will be that we take those and, so put them on that document, and that's not something we're waiting for us to take action on. It is, we're sending that because in the past, it was something that Tom was taking away, or something that we need to confer with Scott or with attorneys or with Stephanie or anybody else. So I think one of the important components about that process will be that when we put something on that list, we have to let the sort of responsible person know this item is on the list, and please get back to us with an ETA for resolution. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Okay. So on that topic, so the items that we have here were items, I think, back in February that we had tagged that I think Tom was going to investigate. And I don't know that we ever bottomed out on that question. So the 2 comments that we have in the 3000 series are with regard to, so this 3231 medical reimbursement and an agreement with a third party or another board of education to comply with these requirements. We had questions about, is this something we do? Do we seek costs or whatever? Who is the appropriate person? Stephanie, do you think it's Scott who would look into that? And I can jump to the policy to make it easier to read. Sorry. Okay, so it's right here, and obviously,
Medical reimbursement for special education students.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be a collaboration between the director and the director of finance and facilities.
Okay. So would it be appropriate for us to assign this to Scott to track down?
I don't know about that at the present time. We have a new director of special ed too.
Perhaps to
Um,
Jen then?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jen would be in a good position to say what currently occurs.
Okay.
Because I could be wrong. I mean, it might go through the superintendent first and then go to Scott. I'm not typically involved with this.
Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if this isn't, not to punt things, but a good situation to play forward until we have a new superintendent on board who can collaborate with the two directors of special services to figure out what the preferences are with respect to moving forward. Because I think that we're going to have some very new perspectives between the new superintendent and the new director at Barlow.
Okay. All right. So I think what that means is we take our policy document and just take this and say, awaiting arrival of new. Good.
Why don't we take a minute to figure out where we left off in the comments and how many more pages we should kind of endeavor
Yep.
to, 'cause I
And-
know we're bumping up against the time.
Yep. Something is wrong. There we go. Okay. All right. So we
Stopped at
stopped.
32, or beginning of 3240.
Correct. Okay. So here we had a pending, a comment from Maureen. Pending approval by whom of what?
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be in a policy manual. I just needed to know the answer to make sure that it did or did not need to be in a policy manual. And I didn't know the answer.
I believe that the superintendent is the person who provides the approval.
Individually. On a case-by-case basis kind of thing, Stephanie?
Yes, so I'm reading through it. This would include children of staff members. Because that's the most common situation.
That's in a different policy, I think, at least in Reading. We addressed that a couple of years ago. I think this is straight for non-residents, and then there's a different policy that applies to staff and the rate at which they pay.
Yeah, I would put it to the superintendent.
Because what's interesting is that the policy at the beginning suggests that this is the board takes action to permit. It never delegates that responsibility to the superintendent. It only delegates the superintendent the right to terminate.
Interestingly enough, Chris, I do remember a Region 9 meeting, and maybe Gwen does too, about a student that we needed to approve that was going to attend Barlow.
I remember that, a foreign student, I think.
Yes.
An exchange.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is this grounded in a statute somewhere? Because I do remember we had to convene that meeting and it was in the summer and.
It was a whole quick thing.
Because it was a foreign exchange student who had initially was going someplace else and ended up coming to Reading over the summer, whereas normally those things happen months in advance in the previous school year. So we had to quickly approve that student's matriculation.
Right, so I guess the question is whether it's that the superintendent is making a recommendation to the board for the board's approval. Because there might be some cases, so I would think, depending on the number, this could be a question of class size tipping over.
We had that discussion actually with respect
Right.
to that student. As a broader question, not as to his admission, but as a broader question.
So I know we're at time. Are we comfortable if we pin here? I mean, I don't think that we've gotten too far down, but we've sort of oriented our minds to sort of what we're talking about here a little bit more. Are we okay with stopping here?
And so
Yeah.
what page is that on this document?
This should be page 14.
14. So if we try to shoot for pages 14 through, 60 or something as a
Yep.
markup period or whatever,
Right.
that should give us plenty of runway for when we're able to get back to this.
Right. Okay. Very good. It takes us to public comment, board member comment, committee member comment.
I move that we adjourn at 10:01.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's us at 10:01.